have voices and we must stand in our truth, and our men must walk with us.
Tonight, supporters call out Manitoba's top chief at a Winnipeg rally.
Gas prices are going up, and equipment and ammunition and everything that goes into hunting, as those prices also continue to rise.
Plus, inflation hammers the people of Nunavut.
I will do whatever it takes to get justice and compensation for the people.
And a warrior for the people passes into the spirit world. Good evening and welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. Dozens of people gathered in Winnipeg this morning outside of the headquarters of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. The rally was in support of women, both past and present, who have come forward with allegations against Grand Chief Arlen Dumas. Last week, allegations came forward accusing the Grand Chief of, quote, harassment, sexual harassment, and sexualized violence. The allegations against Dumas come from a female employee of the AMC, a political advocacy group for 61 First Nations in Manitoba. No charges have been laid, and Dumas has yet to comment. On Friday, AMC suspended Dumas while the complaint is investigated. Hilda Anderson-Pierce is an MMIWG family member and advocate who spoke at today's rally.
We have voices and we must stand in our truth, and our men must walk with us. I give a lot of gratitude to the men who are here with us today and walking with us. I truly honor your presence here. And for all our allies outside of our communities, I give a lot of gratitude as well, for helping us raise our voices and for our voices to become louder.
Our reporter Kathleen Martens was at the rally this morning, and she joins me now. Kathleen, thanks so much for joining us here on the desk. So can you sort of set the scene for us and describe what the rally was?
Yeah, well, horns were honking, flags were waving. It was a group of 20 to 30 people gathered this morning in front of the downtown office of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. They were having a rally in support of a woman who's an employee there, who last week leveled an allegation of sexual assault against the Grand Chief, Arlen Dumas.
Okay, so who was there and what do they have to say about this?
Yeah, there were about 5 or 6 speakers. It was organized by a grandmother's group. They even had a female drum group. So they wanted to show their support as women for the female employee and also for other women who came forward to APTN in 2019 and said they were inappropriately approached, texted by Arlen Dumas. And at that time, they didn't receive any public support. So today, that's what was happening. They said they're going to come forward and gather like that every time now a woman comes forward with an allegation.
Okay. So was anyone from the Manitoba Chiefs there at the Assembly?
Not that we could see. No chiefs. There was a councillor there, a woman from Fox Lake Cree Nation, in support. She actually carried one of the signs. There were a number of signs saying that Dumas should step down, he shouldn't be on leave, and that the AMC should be more receptive and accountable for the support it has shown Dumas over the last 3 years or so.
All right, and so I guess what happens next here?
Well, the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs said today they're going to name an interim replacement for Grand Chief Dumas because late last week they placed him on leave, and they're doing an internal investigation into the allegation. As well, we're waiting to see, Winnipeg Police are investigating the woman's complaint, so we're waiting to see what comes of that.
All right. Well, Kathleen, thank you so much for all your hard work, and certainly a story we'll be watching in the future.
You're welcome.
Shamattawa First Nation Chief Eric Redhead was elected as acting Grand Chief this afternoon, pending an investigation of Dumas. You can see more of our coverage at www.aptnnews.ca. It was an emotional plea from the family of a Saskatoon woman who was found dead in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan last week. Taya Sinclair's family gathered to remind people that the 24-year-old was a much-loved woman. Prince Albert Police issued an apology to the family for releasing disturbing details about Sinclair's death, shocking her grieving family. They are asking anyone with any information on Sinclair's death to go to the police. Two of her aunts addressed the police and media asking for justice and understanding.
I ask that you please take our voices and our stories seriously when we come to you. We would also like to remind you to be kind. We are grieving families. We are hurting. We are in active trauma.
Our young lady is gone to the spirit world at 24 years old, left behind 2 children. We are blessed to have those children, and we were blessed to have Thea for as long as we have.
Now to the war in Ukraine. The city of Mariupol is being described as hell on earth, with the front lines and fighting happening now within the city itself. House-to-house street battles are making it very difficult to get information out of Mariupol, largely cut off from the outside world. Ukraine is refusing to surrender. A deadline imposed by Russia came and went at 5 a.m. local time today. An estimated 2,300 people have been killed and 90% of the buildings have been either damaged or destroyed. About 300,000 people are still trapped in Mariupol without power, food, or running water. And as the war continues, 2 Mi'kmaq men from the same community have joined the war effort to defend that country against the Russian invasion. One has already returned and the other is preparing to leave in a couple of weeks. Angel Moore reports.
That's Samuel Sutherland of the Natawahaneg First Nation. He's preparing for combat in Ukraine at his foster parents' farm in New Brunswick.
It is the right thing to do, and I strongly believe in it. I'm going to put my life on the line for it.
Sutherland, father of 3, is a 60 Scoop survivor and former Canadian soldier. He's never been in combat, but that won't stop him. His wife, Haley Kale Sutherland, is supportive.
I never really told him not to go because I know, like, he can handle his own. He was trained specifically for this type of situation, so I have complete faith in him.
Days after Russia attacked Ukraine, its foreign minister, Dmytro Kuleba, tweeted, "I invite you to contact foreign diplomatic missions of Ukraine in your respective countries. Together we defeated Hitler, and we will defeat Putin too." Kuleba announced last week more than 20,000 volunteers from 52 countries have arrived there. As the conflict escalated, Sutherland began raising funds and accepting donations, such as medical supplies.
You know, seeing the atrocities I'm seeing on the news, on other social media platforms of what Russians are doing to the civilians and innocent children, I don't believe in that. I stand up for what I believe in. I put my money where my mouth is. And I went out, got myself a uniform, so I'm putting the uniform back on again and going to go and help them with their freedom.
Sutherland's friend, Hunter Francis of Natawahaneg First Nation, seen on the left side of the photo, also volunteered to fight. He was in Ukraine for 6 days before sustaining non-life-threatening injuries. He has returned home but was not available for comment. Sutherland felt he had to help. Natawahaneg First Nation has a long tradition of its community members going to war. Chief George Guinish says some community members have served in World War I and World War II.
Our warriors have stood up, you know, and been there when the need was there, and these 2 gentlemen, I know Sam has a little more military experience, but they wanted to help. They wanted to make a difference, and so we absolutely would support them, and we just tell them, be careful, be safe. So.
Despite his preparations, Sutherland still worries about what the future holds.
Oh yeah, definitely scared. It's war, it's not a joke.
Sutherland plans to leave for the Ukraine in a few weeks. If the war has ended by then, he will help the Ukrainian people rebuild through humanitarian efforts. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Natawahaneg First Nation, New Brunswick.
We need to step aside for a short break, but still ahead, a handful of groups are trying to orchestrate a First Nations purchase of the Trans Mountain Pipeline from the federal government. Details next. Welcome back to APTN National News. The warning signs are all there. Interest rates are going up, cost of fuel is going up, and the overall cost of living will climb this year. Nunavut is already Canada's most food insecure region. Simply put, a higher percentage of people go hungry in Nunavut than in the rest of the country. Our Kent Driscoll stopped by the Iqaluit Food Centre to see how they're preparing for inflation's hammer.
Here at the Kajuktervik Food Centre in Iqaluit, they teach cooking lessons. They help people advocate for themselves through government red tape, and they run a Iqaluit soup kitchen. The demand is huge.
In October, we saw demand skyrocket. This was at a time when here in Iqaluit we had a water crisis ongoing where we saw demand explode as people were unable to cook with clean water in their homes. But it was also coincided with the end of a lot of the income programs that were available throughout the pandemic for community members.
They went from serving under 100 people a day when COVID benefits were in place to upwards of 250 people a day when those benefits ended. Now, with an expected increase in cost of living this year, that could get even higher. Bright side, the previous crisis could help fund this one.
One thing that was a silver lining of the water crisis is that we received a lot of donations from people and foundations from across the country. So the last year has seen a significant increase in the amount of donations that we usually see that we are now looking to possibly use to offset our food costs.
The biggest cost for food is shipping it to Nunavut. But there's lots of food in Nunavut. You just have to know how to hunt it. Looking local is another possible solution, one they're trying already here at the food center. That's about to get more expensive too.
As gas prices are going up and equipment and ammunition and everything that goes into hunting, as those prices also continue to rise, it means that we need to pay hunters more to ensure that they are also making a living income off of hunting.
60% of Nunavut households have a food insecure adult, someone that doesn't have enough to eat. 40% of homes in Nunavut have a child in the same hungry situation. A higher cost of living will hit Nunavut hard because the status quo hits pretty hard already. Kent Driscoll, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
A BC First Nations organization is warning buyer beware when it comes to investment in the controversial Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. A handful of groups are trying to orchestrate a First Nations purchase of the pipeline from the federal government, but the Union of BC Indian Chiefs says First Nations should think again. APTN's Fraser Needham reports.
It just isn't worth it. This is the message the Union of BC Indian Chiefs sent out in an open letter last week. When it comes to proposed First Nations investment in the Trans Mountain Pipeline, the cost of the pipeline expansion has almost quadrupled from original estimates to its current price of $21.4 billion. And Grand Chief Stuart Phillips says pipeline backers are now turning to First Nations as part of a last-ditch effort to save the project.
And so there's a desperate effort to recruit Indigenous involvement, Indigenous support, in a clumsy effort to convince the financial institutions and the pension plans that these are somehow now ethical investments. And of course, we know nothing else could be further from the truth.
Calgary-based Project Reconciliation is one of the groups trying to facilitate First Nations ownership of the pipeline. Stephen Mason says COVID-19 and catastrophic weather events have contributed to the cost overruns of Trans Mountain. But he says with the help of increased toll fees for oil companies, the project remains financially viable.
So, one, we believe that the 21.4 is still on the high side with contingency built in. And two, that the tolls will take up to absorbing up to 15 billion. So there is a delta there, but from there, then the capacity piece to the tolls escalate at 2.5% per year. So there is enough room in there that you can transact the deal.
Irregardless of profits, Phillips says the pipeline is a bad investment for First Nations for another reason. He says these communities should not be part of a project that will further contribute to serious environmental damage.
It's not who is involved in the business end of oil and gas pipelines, it's it's the garbage products that go through these pipelines that represent an enormous threat to the environment and an increase in greenhouse gas emissions and more towns burning to the ground and more flooding events.
Mason agrees that Canada needs to start thinking about a transition to a green economy, but he says the Trans Mountain Pipeline could be part of that transition.
There is no reason why that this corridor cannot be ultimately repurposed for zero carbon based fuels. And to have the Indigenous ownership of this right of way is a critical piece of the value chain. So they're buying a right of way and having a oversight to the environmental impact of this right of way. But the key piece is you're buying a utility corridor that can be repurposed.
Once completed, the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion will increase transmission from 300,000 barrels of oil per day to 890,000. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
All right, we need to step aside one more time, but still to come. A gift shop in a trendy Toronto neighborhood selling Indigenous art has quickly become a hit. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Look real closely because Greg Scriver did, and Greg was able to capture this image of a beautiful eastern screech owl nestled nicely into this tree there. It's an amazing shot, Greg, and good eye. Send your great photos by email to share@aptn.ca, and your picture might be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Beginning in the east, 0 degrees in Charlottetown and +1 in Fredericton. 0 degrees in Cartwright and 0 in Happy Valley Goose Bay. 0 degrees in Quebec City and +3 in Val d'Or. 8 degrees in Toronto and sunny and 4 in North Bay. -1 and some snow in Big Trout Lake and 4 and sun in Timmins. -5 and snow in Churchill and +4 and snow in Thompson. Snow and 0 in Barons River and +1 in Winnipeg. Sunny and 11 degrees in Swift Current and +3 in North Battleford. -1 and snow in Stony Rapids and +6 in La Ronge. Moving over to the west, 11 degrees in Fort McMurray and 13 in Grand Prairie. 13 in Edmonton and 15 degrees in Lethbridge. 12 and rain in Campbell River and 14 and rain in Quesnel. 4 degrees in Dease Lake and 11 in Smithers. -9 and snow in Dawson and -1 in Mayo. -14 and snow in Norman Wells and -11 in Fort Simpson. -20 and snow in Inuvik and -23 in Fort McPherson. -24 in Cambridge Bay and snow and -6 in Baker Lake. -28 in Resolute and -19 in Iqaluit. A little gift shop in a trendy Toronto neighborhood selling Indigenous art has quickly become a hit. For the artists, it's a lifesaver as the pandemic cut into their bottom line. But as Annette Francis explains, shop now because it won't be there for long.
This little pop-up market in downtown Toronto is a treasure trove full of Indigenous arts and crafts. There's everything from jewelry to carvings and paintings.
Its title's Goodwin, Quashmagokwe and Okamawatch, which I named
Clayton
after
Samuel King is one of 36 artists whose work is being showcased here. Creating art is King's bread and butter. Normally, he'd be heading to festivals or powwows, but the pandemic put an end to all that, so this place has been a lifeline.
Having an opportunity here with Ampava's Indigenous Art Market really helps. Struggling artist like myself during this time period, and with places like this, things are starting to pick up and help that creative process flow even more, as we pay the bills, right?
This is the second pop-up market to be sponsored by the Aboriginal Association for Native Development in the Performing and Visual Arts. The first was set up before Christmas to help artists who were suffering from a loss of income. Executive Director Millie Knapp says it was a huge success, bringing in over $200,000.
All of it went back to the artists, and some of the artists told us that we saved their careers and they were ready to give up. They had no outlet to sell their work. Others said that they had 2 years of inventory that was just sitting at home on their shelves, sold out here.
Curator Barb Nawagabo says the market is helping to expose the various works of artists from across the country, and that's important.
I think they contribute so much to our communities, to our nation. They're our historians, our storytellers, our philosophers, dreamers, visionaries, all in one person. And I think that they haven't received as much support from our communities as they could have. So I'd really like to see them secure their rightful place again.
Knapp says the pop-up markets are experimental and temporary for now.
We're working on a 5-year business plan in which we want to land at a cultural hub with like a revillagizing theme.
Anyone interested in checking out this market, it's open until Wednesdays to Sundays. The address is 1107 Queen Street East, and it's open until June 30th. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Toronto.
A longtime advocate for federal day school survivors has passed away. Ray Mason of Peguis First Nation in central Manitoba helped launch a class action lawsuit that resulted in a $1.47 billion settlement suit in 2009. In 2019, the federal court ruled in favor of thousands of First Nation children who attended on-reserve day schools but were excluded from the apology and compensation paid to residential school survivors during the Indian residential school settlement. Mason received an honorary doctorate from Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. He passed away Sunday after a long illness at the age of 75. Mason was tireless. He worked until just last year on getting survivors of schools not covered under any agreement the recognition they deserved. Here's a clip from the award-winning APTN Investigates documentary Broken Circle by Cullen Crozier.
I made it a personal mission that I would never give up on getting survivors justice and compensation for what happened to us in these different institutions. And I will do whatever it takes to get justice and compensation for the people.
Our condolences go out to Mason's family. That's all we have for you tonight on this Monday edition of APTN National News. For tonight's stories and plenty more, visit our website at aptnnews.ca. I'm Daryl Stranger. Thank you for joining us and have a great night.